I was 27 when we thought the world belonged to us. College was laughter echoing through dorm hallways, late-night coffee runs, and secrets whispered under the stars. Jason was the fearless one, Sarah was the heart of our group, and me, Emily Carter, was always caught between wonder and worry. That autumn, we decided to camp in the forest just beyond campus, a place we thought was ours alone. We carried guitars, cheap wine, and the kind of reckless joy only youth can afford. But the forest had its own memory. It wasn't just trees and shadows, it was alive, watching, waiting. That night, as flames flickered against our faces, we heard whispers that didn't belong to us. Jason laughed it off, Sarah grew pale, and I tried to convince myself it was the wind. Then we found the torn page, half buried in the dirt, written in handwriting I knew too well. It belonged to someone who should have been with us, someone who had vanished years before. Now I am 42, standing once again at the edge of that same forest. I didn't come here for nostalgia. I came because silence has a way of rotting inside you. The forest doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And tonight, when the firelight flickers against the trees, I know we'll face something that shouldn't be with us. Something that never left. I still remember the night we handed the forest our hearts, and it kept one. I was 27 then. Old enough to think I was grown, young enough to be foolish, and everything about campus felt wide and bright, like a stage built just for us. Jason Miller said the world would never be this alive again. Sarah Thompson said the world was only alive because we were together. And me, Emily Carter. I said yes to the kind of plan you don't realize is a goodbye until it's too late. We picked a Friday in late October, when the air turned crisp, and the sky looked peeled and clean, as if someone had washed it just for us. The forest sat at the edge of campus, not far from the old football field, and everyone treated it like a rumor. Safe enough in daylight, endless in the dark. We wanted the dark. We wanted what was behind it. I can still feel the weight of the guitar case in my hand, the cheap wine pressing cold against my side through the canvas bag, the soft scratch of blankets under my arm. Jason carried the flashlight like a badge he'd earned. Sarah took the matches as if fire had ever denied her anything. We didn't invite many others. Only the two of them mattered. The three of us felt like a single sentence, easy to say, impossible to forget. I remember the sound our shoes made on the gravel path, the way small stones leaped and went silent behind us. The path was honest at first, wide, definite, confident, but it began to narrow as the trees tightened, as if the forest wanted to pinch us into a line it could swallow one by one. The last light of the day drew a thin gold stitch across the horizon, then tugged it shut. There was a clearing we loved, a place we kept secret. It was ringed by pines and half-kneeling oaks, and it felt exactly like a room, as if the forest had done this before and knew how to welcome guests. We reached it just as the light lowered to a whisper. Jason set the guitar down like it had a name. Sarah stripped the blankets with a flourish, and I set the wine and paper cups beside the spot where we always built the fire. It was a ritual without religion, familiar and close. We didn't look at the trees. We didn't ask the forest for permission. We weren't that kind of cautious yet. The first match flared and failed. Sarah grinned and tried again, soft breath along the red tip, eyes bright with the kind of patience that makes everything look easy. The second match caught. The fire accepted it with a small exhale, then built itself taller and warmer, until the clearing was a theater and we were the play. Jason tuned the guitar by feel, half listening, half showing off the way he always did when nerves made him generous. He started with an old song we never finished writing, the one about leaving and staying at the same time. Sarah hummed the second line and I took the third. Sounded like home. It sounded like we'd promised something long before we knew what promises cost. We discussed classes, professors, and the cafeteria coffee that tasted like it had been scorched by heat. We took turns telling stories only we remembered. The way Jason stole a mascot banner and strung it across the dorm window, the way Sarah corrected a professor in front of the entire lecture and made him grateful for it, the way I once fell asleep in the library and dreamt myself into a poem I never wrote. We laughed. God, we laughed. It's cruel how laughter fits so neatly beside what comes next. The wind entered early that night, not as a guest but as a host. It threaded the branches above us, light at first, then heavier, like fingers testing a piano for a song no one had requested. Jason played louder. Sarah tossed a stick into the fire, a simple offering. I leaned back on my elbows and looked at the outline of trees against a sky that had stopped trying to be gentle. It was not a bad night. It was not a warning. It was the kind of night you only notice later because it refuses to leave. After the second cup of wine, the clearing felt warmer than it should have for late October. Jason turned the lights on the flashlight and set it aside, saying we didn't need anything but the fire. The fire agreed. It seemed taller than when we started, the flames stretching as though they were trying to whisper to the highest leaves. "Close your eyes," Sarah said. "Listen." Jason rolled his eyes dramatically but closed them anyway. I obeyed because I loved how she sounded when she asked for quiet. We waited. Silence at first. Then a sound that had no shape, somewhere between breath and the end of a word. "It's the wind," Jason said, eyes still shut, with the certainty of someone who refuses to give a name to the first thing that frightens him. "No," Sarah said, "not the wind." I didn't speak. I felt the sound moving, curving around us, finding the angles where our attention was thinnest. It wasn't a voice. It was wrong in a way that raises the question of whether it is incorrect. We opened our eyes together. Jason strummed and smiled. An easy lie lay carefully on top of something we couldn't look at yet. Sarah looked at me. I looked at the trees. We did not look at each other long enough to tell the truth. I saw it first. The corner of a page, darker than the dirt that pretended to own it, pressed half deep just beyond the edge of the firelight. It didn't fit. It was too straight, too confident, too much like it had the right to be part of our night. "What's that?" I asked, not moving. Jason followed my gaze, squinted, and shook his head. "Trash," he said, the way he said words he wanted to be small. Sarah stood and went to it, slow and careful. She knelt and brushed the soil away. The way she would open a gift she didn't trust. The page came loose with more reluctance than paper should have. She held it with both hands, tilted it toward the fire, and I saw the ink before I saw the letters. I knew the handwriting before I knew the words. There are things your body knows before your mind allows them. The curve of a Y, the slash of a T, the tiny habit of the person who writes, and like they're apologizing for joining two things that shouldn't touch. I knew it the way you know your own name. I knew it the way you know someone is behind you without turning. "It's hers," Sarah whispered, and I could hear the pieces of that sentence falling against each other inside her. I took a step forward, then another. Jason stayed where he was, the guitar silent and heavy in his lap. We looked at the page as if looking might be enough to turn it into something else. The words were smudged but intact enough to be cruel. "The forest remembers." We didn't say her name. That's the truth. We had made a pact with silence years before, and silence always insists on being honored in the small ways, even when it fails in the large ones. We didn't say her name, but all three of us heard it anyway, as if the trees had found a way to pronounce it without mouths. Jason stood abruptly, as though motion itself were proof against whatever the page suggested. "It's a prank," he said. "Some idiot found an old notebook and thought this would be funny." Sarah did not move. "No one knew," she said. "No one was there that night but us." The forest let the wind grow heavier. It wrapped itself around the clearing like a shawl we hadn't asked for. I looked at the page and felt the first clean split of fear, the kind that separates before and after with a line so thin you hear it more than see it. We put the page down because we didn't want to hold it anymore. Sarah set it carefully at the edge of the blanket. Jason nudged it with the toe of his boot, then seemed to regret touching it at all. I swung my gaze to the path we had entered by, not because I wanted to leave, but because it seemed suddenly necessary to know it remained. This is the part one have never been able to describe without people thinking I've embellished it to make the memory survivable. The path was smaller. It was still there, yes, but narrower, as if someone had pinched it together and left fingerprints in the dirt. The trees remembered anger. They were closer. The clearing no longer felt like a room. It felt like a mouth. Jason grabbed the flashlight. The beam was too thin. He swung it across the line where earth became more than earth, and the light seemed to lose courage every time it touched bark. "We go now," he said. Not an order, not a plea. A blueprint for not having to admit anything else. Sarah shook her head, the kind of tiny shake people mistake for indecision. It was resignation, the place where saying no would arrive too late to matter. "If we run, we'll turn this into a chase," she said. "We don't want to know what it looks like when it's chasing." "We?" Jason demanded, fear making him rude. "It's a place," he said, as if places cannot decide who is part of them. The whispers returned as if they had been waiting for us to speak again. This time they moved in loops around the fire behind us, over the blankets, through the space where our knees almost touched. I tried to find language inside them to pull a single clean word free. All I got was the sense you feel when you know someone is telling you they are hurt, and you cannot fix it. I wanted to say her name. I wanted to say it because sometimes names break curses. But I was 27 and in love with the idea that we hadn't done anything wrong, and I did not say it. It was my first mistake. It was not the last. Jason lifted the guitar by the neck and set it down beside the fire as if he might have to leave it behind. "We're leaving," he said again, less sure. He walked to the path and stood there, searching for a direction his fear would accept. Sarah stood equally still, and her stillness felt like bravery and refusal at the same time. I walked to the torn page, because I could not pretend it wasn't there, and knelt beside it. The ink had bled small rivers into the fibers, the way tears bleed into cotton. The sentence held anyway. "The forest remembers." I pressed my finger to the edge, not touching the words, but feeling for warmth the way you press a milk bottle to your wrist. The paper was not cold. I wish I could tell you I am wrong about that, but I am not. It was not cold. We decided to stay for 15 more minutes. That's what people do when they believe they can make a deal with fear. Negotiate time, negotiate posture, negotiate whether the thing exists. 15 minutes is a ritual number. It feels adult. It feels like you have decided with your whole clean mind to be sensible. We told ourselves that if nothing else happened, we'd leave. Then we told ourselves nothing else would happen because we had earned a reprieve by acknowledging the possibility. Jason told a story instead of a prayer. Sarah breathed slowly, like she was hiding the rhythm for someone who might come looking for it. I looked at the tree line as if it might confess a geometry that would save us. The fire trimmed itself shorter, then rose again like it was stretching before a race. The whispers leaned in and out, flirting with sentences, refusing them as soon as they became recognizable. A branch snapped somewhere not far enough away to be safe. We did not flinch. We were deeply committed to not appearing to owe an explanation. I saw the second page in my periphery. I did not see it. But the body remembers to turn toward the thing you most fear in the same way it turns toward someone you love, entering a room. This page was folded once, then pressed flat by dirt, and it lay a foot to the left of the first, as if the forest had set it there with care. I picked it up because there is a difference between courage and asking someone else to be the one who can never forget the weight of it. The words were shorter. I cannot tell you if they were hers. I want them to have been anyone else's. They weren't. The sentence said, "You promised." Jason took a step backward, as if the page had pushed him. Sarah sat down like that sentence had taken her knees. I did not move. I watched the fire become brighter, and I listened to the whispers change shape. They did not sound mournful now. They sounded exact. It is not a crime to promise things and fail. It is not a crime to be 27. But promises are pride. And pride is what the forest eats when there is nothing left that looks like food. Jason made a list under his breath of practical options. Gather our things, leave the guitar, leave the wine, keep the flashlight, stick to the center, do not turn if someone calls your name. I say someone because I didn't want to use pronouns for the forest, and I still don't. A place should not have grammar. Sarah held my wrist. Her fingers were colder than the night deserved. She whispered, "We should say it." I knew what she meant. I shook my head. "Not here," I said. Not where it can hear us. It was superstition. It was cowardice. It was exactly the kind of lie that lets you stand up and pretend you are ready. We tried to leave. We lifted the blankets, slid the cups into the bag, and stowed the guitar even though it felt ridiculous to bring sound to a place that had decided sound was its work. Jason shone the flashlight at the path again. And this time I am telling you this, and I expect not to be believed. The dirt had fewer footprints. We had made them. We were looking at proof that we had not been ourselves. The forest took patience from us in small bites. That's how it wins. It does not steal the visible first. It takes the permission you give yourself to think you will be fine. The whispers cleared once like a throat. The word that arrived was not a name. It was a question. It asked softly and without hurry, "Why?" Jason said, "Run." Sarah said, "No." I said nothing because there is a kind of silence that is so exact it becomes speech. We did not run. We did something worse. We moved quickly but stayed together and told ourselves the speed was a strategy. We followed the thin beam of the flashlight as if light cannot lie. We left the clearing. We stepped into a corridor of trees we did not recognize, even though there are only so many ways to arrange trees. I am 42 now, and I still cannot say exactly when the forest decided we were its work. But I can tell you the moment I knew it had kept a ledger of our goodness and our failures and had found the failures more interesting. It was when the flashlight died for 2 seconds. That is all it took. 2 seconds. Darkness hit like water and left like guilt, and when the beam returned, we were facing a smaller clearing we had never seen. A circle of stones that did not match the geology of the campus, and a tree with a mark I have never been able to find again. It wasn't a symbol I recognized. It wasn't familiar. It was a curved line that seemed to be both invitation and refusal. Sarah pulled me closer to her before I could make the mistake of touching it. Jason lifted the flashlight higher. The whispering stopped, and for one breath, the forest made a sound like someone had pressed a finger to their lips. You think you know your fear. You think you can categorize it, make a taxonomy you can memorize and carry into places that test it. You cannot. The body invents new rooms for fear every time it needs them. We stayed there, because where else is there when the place you meant to leave insists you become a second kind of guest? I could feel the soles of my shoes measure the ground, sending up small alarms my mind pretended to ignore. Jason talked to the dark like it had the authority to let us go. Sarah's hand kept my pulse company. We did not pray. We did not apologize. We did not confess. I tell you this because it matters later, and because the forest does not forget the silence you choose when it offers you the chance to make another kind of noise. We turned back toward the fire when the air sharpened, and the cold arrived with a speed that made it feel deliberate. The path revealed itself again, thickening like despised mercy. We walked it, our shoulders brushing because we needed that proof, and when we reached the clearing, our fire was taller than we left it. The torn pages lay where we had set them, and I felt something akin to relief, the sort of relief a person might feel upon finding a familiar house after wandering a neighborhood where none of the doors had visible locks. We stood at the edge, and we looked at the flame, and we looked at the pages, and Sarah said, "We stay." Jason said nothing this time. He had run out of names for sensible choices. We stayed until the fire flattened and the cold made rehearsal of winter around our ankles. We stayed until our own breaths congregated and pretended to be a new kind of fog. We stayed because leaving felt like telling the forest we accepted the terms, and staying felt like asking if there were other versions of the agreement we might sign instead. I am 42 now, and I know the thing I didn't know then. The forest had already decided the order of events. We were not negotiating. We were delaying. It is important to admit what you were doing when the worst thing happened. It is important because if you cannot name it, the worst thing happens again every time you try. We did not say her name. We did not fix the promise. We did not leave. We did exactly what the forest required to keep its memory intact. And when the last high flame leaned and fell, the whispers returned, closer than they had ever been, with a soft confidence of something that knows it does not need forgiveness. The forest remembers. I wish that had been enough to save us. I can still feel the exact moment the forest decided we were no longer guests. At 27, I thought fear was something you could laugh off, something you could drown in wine or smother with a song. But that night, fear became a language, and the forest spoke it fluently. We had tried to leave. Jason insisted, Sarah resisted, and I stood between them, torn like the page that lay in the dirt. The flashlight beam shook in Jason's hand, slicing through the dark in nervous arcs. The path we thought we knew had twisted, narrowed, and then vanished altogether. It was as if the forest had swallowed its own map. Sarah whispered, "We're not supposed to be here." Jason snapped, "We've been here 100 times. Stop acting like it's cursed." But I knew. I knew because the whispers had changed. They weren't circling us anymore. They were inside us, curling around our thoughts, pressing against the fragile walls of memory. We stumbled deeper into the trees, hoping to find another clearing, another landmark, anything familiar. The fire behind us dimmed, swallowed by distance faster than it should have been. I glanced back once, and the glow was gone, as if it had never existed. Jason muttered curses under his breath, his bravado cracking. Sarah clutched my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Emily," she said, her voice trembling, "what if she's still here?" I froze. Here? The friend who vanished. The one we never spoke of again. Jason spun around, his face pale. "Don't start with that. She's gone. She's been gone for years." But Sarah's eyes were wide, haunted. What if the forest kept her? We reached another clearing, smaller, stranger. Stones arranged in a circle, too deliberate to be natural. In the center stood a tree marked with a curved symbol, carved deep into its bark. It wasn't a letter, not in any language I knew. It was a shape that felt wrong, like it had been drawn by something that didn't understand human hands. Jason lifted the flashlight, the beam trembling. "What the hell is that?" Sarah whispered. "It's a ritual." I stepped closer, my breath shallow. The symbol seemed to pulse in the light, shadows bending around it. Beneath the tree lay scraps of fabric, torn and weathered, half buried in the soil. I bent down, brushing dirt away, and my heart stopped. It was a locket. Rusted, broken, but unmistakable. Her locket. The one she wore every day, the one she never took off. I held it in my hand, the metal cold and heavy. My chest tightened, memories flooding back. The way she laughed, the way she sang, the way she vanished into the forest without a sound. Jason swore, backing away. "This is insane. Someone planted this. It's a trick." But Sarah shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "No, it's her. She's here." The whispers surged louder, clearer. For the first time I heard words. "Why?" The question echoed through the clearing, not from the trees, not from the wind, but from everywhere at once. Jason dropped the flashlight, the beam spinning wildly across the stones. "We're leaving. Now." But the forest didn't let us move. The air thickened, pressing against our bodies, holding us in place. My legs felt heavy, my chest constricted. Sarah clutched my hand, her nails biting into my skin. The whispers came again, sharper, angrier. "You promised." I wanted to scream, to deny it, but the words lodged in my throat. Because it was true. We had promised. Years ago, on another night in this same forest, we had sworn to keep her secret. To never tell anyone what happened. To bury it, just like the forest buried her. Jason's voice cracked. "We didn't mean it. We were kids. We didn't know." The forest answered with silence, heavier than sound. Sarah sobbed, clutching the locket. "We should have said her name. We should have told the truth." I whispered, barely audible. "It's too late." The ground beneath us shifted, the stones trembling. The symbol on the tree seemed to glow faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. The whispers rose, overlapping, chaotic, until they became a single scream that tore through the clearing. Jason fell to his knees, covering his ears. Sarah collapsed beside him, the locket clutched to her chest. I stood frozen, my body trembling, my mind unraveling. And then, out of the shadows, a figure stepped forward. I couldn't see her face, not clearly, but I knew. I knew from the way she moved, the way the forest bent around her, the way the air shifted with her presence. It was her. The friend who vanished. She was here. I'm 42 now, and I still don't know if she was real, if she was flesh and blood or something the forest had made from memory and grief. But at 27, standing in that clearing, I believed. She spoke, her voice low, broken but unmistakable. "You left me." Sarah sobbed, shaking her head. "No, we didn't. We tried." Jason shouted, his voice desperate. We didn't know what to do. But I stood silent, the locket heavy in my hand. Because she was right. We had left her. We had buried her in silence, in fear, in promises we never kept. The forest had kept her, and now it wanted us too. The fire that once warmed us now burned too high, flames stretching like desperate hands, then collapsing into embers with unnatural speed. The clearing was no longer a room. It was a stage, and we were the unwilling actors. The stones around us glowed faintly. The carved tree pulsed like a heartbeat, and the whispers had become a chorus. Jason gripped the flashlight, his knuckles white, his bravado gone. Sarah clutched the locket to her chest, her tears streaking in the firelight. And me, Emily Carter, I stood frozen, the torn pages at my feet, the words etched into my mind. "The forest remembers. You promised." The air thickened, pressing against us, making it hard to breathe. My lungs fought for space, my heart hammered against my ribs. The forest wasn't just alive, it was awake. Then she appeared. At first, only a shadow at the edge of the clearing, a figure half-formed, half-hidden. But as the firelight flickered, she stepped forward, and I saw her. Her hair tangled, her clothes torn, her eyes hollow but unmistakable. It was her. The friend we lost. The one we buried in silence. Sarah gasped, dropping the locket. Jason stumbled backward, shaking his head violently. No, this isn't real. She's dead. She's gone. But I knew. My body knew before my mind allowed it. It was her. She spoke, her voice low, broken, but sharp enough to cut through the whispers. "You left me." The words hung in the air, heavier than the night itself. Sarah collapsed to her knees, sobbing. "We didn't mean to. We tried to find you." Jason shouted, his voice cracking. "We didn't know what to do. We were kids." But I stood silent, the weight of her accusation pressing against me. Because she was right. We had left her. We had buried her in silence, in fear, in promises we never kept. The forest roared in response. The ground trembled, branches clawed at the sky, and the fire extinguished in a violent gust. Darkness swallowed us whole, broken only by the faint glow of the carved symbol on the tree. The whispers surged louder, clearer, until they became words. "Say her name." Jason shook his head violently. No, we can't. We promised." Sarah clutched my arm, her nails digging deep. "Emily, please. Say it. Break the silence." I opened my mouth, but the word caught in my throat. Her name. The name we had buried. The name we had sworn never to speak. The figure stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "Say it." The forest demanded it. Jason panicked. He dropped the flashlight, the beam spinning wildly across the stones. "We're leaving. I don't care what this is. We're leaving." He bolted toward the path, but the trees closed in, branches twisting together, blocking his way. Sarah screamed, clutching the locket. "We can't leave. Not until we say it." The figure raised her hand, pointing at me. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried like thunder. "You!" The ground split beneath my feet, the stones trembling, the symbol glowing brighter. The forest had chosen me. I closed my eyes, my chest tight, my throat burning. And then, finally I spoke. Her name. The sound tore through me, raw and broken, but it was real. The silence was shattered, the pact broken. The forest screamed. The whispers became a howl. The trees shook violently, the ground convulsed. Jason fell to the earth, clutching his head. Sarah sobbed, clutching the locket. And the figure, our friend, stared at me, her hollow eyes filling with something I couldn't name. For a moment I thought it was forgiveness. But then she vanished. The clearing fell silent. The fire reignited, weak and trembling. The symbol on the tree dimmed, fading into the bark. The stones lay still. Jason lay on the ground, shaking. Sarah knelt beside him, her face pale, her hands trembling. And me. I stood alone, the echo of her name still ringing in my ears. The forest had taken her, and now it had marked me. I'm 42 now, and I still don't know if speaking her name saved us or doomed us. But I know this. The forest doesn't forget. It doesn't forgive. And when I broke the silence, I became part of its memory. After the scream, after the fire's collapse, after her name tore itself from my throat, the clearing fell into a silence so heavy it felt like a weight pressing against our bones. Jason lay curled on the ground, his hands clamped over his ears, though no sound remained. Sarah knelt beside him, clutching the locket, her face pale and streaked with tears. And me, I stood trembling, my chest hollow, my voice gone. The figure was gone. Our friend, whether ghost, memory, or forest-made apparition, had vanished into the dark. But the forest had not released us. The path reappeared faintly, a thin line of dirt stretching between the trees. Jason saw it first, his eyes wide, his voice hoarse. There. We can leave. Sarah shook her head, whispering, "It's not real. It's another trick." But I knew. The forest had given us a way out, not because we had earned it, but because it had decided we were finished. We gathered our things in silence. The blankets were damp, the cups cracked, the guitar heavier than it should have been. Jason clutched the flashlight, though its beam was weak, flickering. Sarah held the locket, her fingers white around it. I carried the torn pages, unable to leave them behind. We stepped onto the path. The forest resisted. Branches clawed at our clothes, roots tangled around our feet, whispers brushed against our ears. Every step felt like trespass, like the forest wanted us to know we were not welcome, even as it allowed us forward. Jason cursed under his breath, Sarah sobbed quietly, and I kept my eyes fixed on the faint line of dirt, afraid that if I looked away, it would vanish again. The air grew colder, sharper, biting at our skin. Shadows shifted unnaturally, stretching across the path, reaching for us. The whispers rose once more, not words this time, but laughter, low, mocking, endless. We stumbled, we fought, we pressed forward. And then, suddenly, the trees parted. Campus lights. Faint, distant, but real. The forest ended abruptly, spitting us out onto the edge of the football field. The air was different here. Lighter, thinner, human. We collapsed onto the grass, gasping, trembling, broken. Jason lay on his back, staring at the sky, his face pale. "It wasn't real," he whispered. "It was a trick. Just a trick." Sarah shook her head violently, clutching the locket. It was her. She was there. She spoke. I sat in silence, the torn pages heavy in my hands. "The forest remembers. You promised." We tried to return to normal. Classes, coffee, laughter in the dorms. But the forest followed us. Jason drank more, his bravado gone, his laughter hollow. He refused to speak of that night, insisting it was a prank, a hallucination, anything but real. Sarah grew quiet, haunted. She clutched the locket constantly, her eyes shadowed, her voice trembling. She said she heard whispers at night, soft and accusing, curling through her dreams. And me, I carried the torn pages everywhere, hidden in my bag, folded in my notebooks. Sometimes when I opened them, new words appeared. Words I hadn't written. Words I didn't understand. The forest had let us go, but it had not released us. Years passed. We drifted apart. Jason vanished into cities and bars. Sarah into silence and prayer. And me, I carried the memory like a wound that never healed. And I still hear the whispers. I still dream of the clearing, the stones, the carved tree. I still see her face in the shadows, her voice in the wind. The forest doesn't forgive. It doesn't forget. And neither do I. We thought we survived. But survival is not freedom. The forest marked us, and it waits still. Every night when silence grows heavy, I hear it breathing. The forest remembers. And now so do I. Forever.